Did you know that millions of seniors could see their benefits dramatically change because of one massive piece of legislation currently making its way through Congress? What if I told you that this single bill could affect whether your grandmother gets her Medicaid coverage or whether your parents see changes to their Social Security benefits in ways that nobody saw coming? The answers might shock you, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill means for America's most vulnerable populations. But before we dive deep into this complex legislation that's causing heated debates in Washington, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell because we're breaking down the most important political and policy developments that directly impact your family's financial future, and you won't want to miss a single update. So what exactly is this big, beautiful bill that President Trump and Republican lawmakers are pushing through Congress, and why should every American family be paying attention right now? The legislation, officially known as a reconciliation bill, represents one of the most significant attempts to reshape America's social safety net programs in decades, and the implications extend far beyond what most people realize. This isn't just another political talking point or campaign promise being debated in Washington boardrooms. This is legislation that could fundamentally alter how millions of Americans access healthcare, receive government assistance, and plan for their retirement years. The bill, which recently passed the House of Representatives after intense negotiations and last-minute compromises, contains sweeping changes to multiple government programs that touch the lives of ordinary Americans every single day. But here's where things get complicated and why you need to understand the details. While President Trump has repeatedly promised to protect Social Security and Medicare benefits, saying over and over again that his administration will never cut these programs, the reality of what's actually written in this legislation tells a more nuanced story that deserves careful examination. Let's start with Medicaid, because this is where the most dramatic changes are hiding in plain sight. The current version of the bill proposes cutting approximately $625 billion from Medicaid over the next decade, which according to nonpartisan analysis from KFF would result in more than 10 million people losing their enrollment in the program. But who are these 10 million Americans, and what does this mean for families across the country? These aren't just abstract numbers on a government spreadsheet. These represent real people including children, pregnant women, elderly Americans in nursing homes, and disabled individuals who rely on Medicaid for essential healthcare services that they simply cannot afford through private insurance. The Medicaid cuts work primarily through something called work requirements, which sound reasonable on the surface but create significant complications in practice. Under the proposed changes, able-bodied adults between certain ages would be required to work, participate in job training, or volunteer for a specific number of hours each week to maintain their Medicaid eligibility. The implementation date for these work requirements has been moved up significantly during negotiations, now set to take effect no later than December 31, 2026, rather than the originally proposed 2029 timeline. But here's the question that should concern every American: what happens to people who want to work but live in areas with limited job opportunities, or those who have health conditions that make consistent employment challenging but don't qualify for disability benefits? Now, when it comes to Social Security, the situation becomes even more complex and potentially concerning for millions of seniors. While Trump and his administration have repeatedly stated that they will protect Social Security benefits and ensure that current recipients won't see their payments reduced, there's an indirect threat buried in this legislation that could have devastating long-term consequences. The bill includes provisions to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits, which sounds like great news for seniors until you dig deeper into the financial mathematics involved. Here's the problem that policy experts are warning about: Social Security benefits are currently funded through a combination of payroll taxes and income taxes on those benefits for higher income recipients. When you remove the income tax component without replacing that revenue source, you're essentially accelerating the depletion of the Social Security Trust Fund. According to recent analysis, eliminating taxes on Social Security benefits could cause the trust fund to be depleted by 2032, which is one full year earlier than currently projected under existing law. What does trust fund depletion mean for actual beneficiaries? It means automatic across-the-board benefit cuts for every single Social Security recipient unless Congress acts to find alternative funding sources. But wait, there's more complexity when we look at Medicare, the healthcare program that millions of seniors depend on for their medical needs. Similar to Social Security, the elimination of taxes on benefits could accelerate the depletion of Medicare's trust fund, potentially moving up the projected exhaustion date to 2030, which would be 6 years earlier than current forecasts. This creates a scenario where the short-term benefit of not paying taxes on Social Security income could lead to long-term reductions in both Social Security and Medicare benefits if lawmakers don't find alternative ways to fund these programs. The political dynamics surrounding this legislation reveal the challenges facing Republican lawmakers who are caught between competing priorities and constituencies. GOP lawmakers representing swing districts, particularly those with large populations of seniors and working families, have insisted they will not vote for any proposal that strips benefits from their constituents. This puts them at odds with more conservative members of their party who are pushing for deeper spending cuts to reduce federal deficits and government expenditures. The result has been a series of compromises and modifications that have watered down some of the most dramatic proposed changes while still maintaining significant alterations to existing programs. One aspect of the bill that deserves attention is the creation of what are now being called Trump accounts, which represents a new approach to building wealth for American families. Under this provision, the federal government would contribute $1,000 to special accounts for children born between 2024 and 2028, essentially creating a government-funded savings program designed to help young Americans build financial security over time. While this sounds positive, critics argue that creating new spending programs while simultaneously cutting existing safety net programs sends mixed messages about fiscal priorities and long-term sustainability. The legislation also includes temporary tax provisions designed to fulfill several of Trump's campaign promises, including eliminating taxes on overtime pay earned between 2026 and 2028. These temporary provisions raise questions about long-term planning and whether these policies will become permanent or simply expire, leaving families to adjust their financial planning accordingly. The temporary nature of many provisions in the bill reflects the political reality of passing legislation through the budget reconciliation process, which allows certain types of bills to pass the Senate with a simple majority rather than the typical 60-vote threshold. What makes this legislation particularly significant is how it represents a fundamental shift in approach to America's social safety net programs. Rather than incremental changes or modest adjustments, this bill proposes sweeping alterations that could reshape how millions of Americans access healthcare, receive government assistance, and plan for their financial futures. The question every voter should be asking is whether these changes align with their values and priorities for the country's direction. For seniors currently receiving benefits or those approaching retirement age, the implications of this legislation extend beyond immediate changes to monthly payments. The potential acceleration of trust fund depletion dates means that long-term financial planning becomes more challenging and uncertain. Families need to consider whether they should adjust their retirement savings strategies, healthcare planning, or caregiving arrangements based on the possibility of reduced government benefits in the coming years. The debate over this legislation also highlights broader questions about the role of government in providing social safety net programs and the balance between fiscal responsibility and protecting vulnerable populations. Supporters argue that work requirements and spending reductions promote personal responsibility and reduce government dependency while ensuring programs remain sustainable for future generations. Critics contend that these changes disproportionately impact the most vulnerable Americans and could increase poverty and health disparities across the country. As this bill moves to the Senate, where Republicans hold a narrow majority, the political calculations become even more complex. Senators from states with large populations of Medicaid recipients or seniors may face pressure to modify or oppose certain provisions, potentially leading to further negotiations and compromises. The final version of any legislation that emerges from this process could look significantly different from what initially passed the House, making it crucial for Americans to stay informed about ongoing developments. Understanding the details of this legislation matters because it affects real families and real lives in ways that extend far beyond political rhetoric and campaign promises. Whether you're a senior worried about your benefits, a working parent concerned about healthcare coverage, or a young adult planning for your financial future, the outcomes of these policy debates will have lasting impacts on your life and the lives of people you care about. The time to pay attention and get involved in the democratic process is now. While these decisions are still being made and your voice can still make a difference in shaping the final outcome.